So I would just like to explain myself. I had recorded this video earlier today when I was actually dressed and not in this ratty old t-shirt, but the lighting was garbage, like absolute garbage, and I was like, okay, that's just not gonna work. When I went back to edit it, and I couldn't be bothered to get dressed again. So here we are now. So anyway, let's get to the topic of this video. My thoughts on the Death Note movie that came out in October of last year. Oliver, quit ruining the blinds! Oliver! Back up! Back up! Thank you. Unpopular opinion here. I did not think that the movie was terrible. Don't get me wrong. There were definitely things wrong with the movie. And let's get into that now. So, with the movie, and just as a warning, this is not going to be spoiler free. Anything is fair game, I'm going to talk about it. So, if you haven't seen it, you're warned.
I don't hate you.
Somebody's texting me. That just stacks this school floor. Okay. Sorry, Aaron was texting me. Anyway, so what I thought the movie did that was kind of interesting, and I think they actually should have gone farther with it, is it took place in Seattle, Washington. Not Japan, it was in place in Seattle, and it was in, you know, the year 2017, 2016, not early 2000s the way the manga and anime were. And also for reference on this is a person who loves Death Note. I watched the whole anime in English. I think I watched it in Japanese. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised. I have all the manga, I've read it all. I've seen the original 2 live action movies that like did come out and were following the movie, and I have them both. I liked them. I cosplayed as Elle before. I freaking love Death Note. So, with that being like in Seattle, I thought that was interesting. But then they made the odd choice of keeping Light and Elle. And Watari and not really anyone else. They just kept those 2. Well, they kept Misa, but they changed her name. And they changed the fact even that this did not take course over like years and like Light met her when he was in college. No, it was all in high school in the course of I think over like a few months. Light was in high school the whole time. They never showed the graduation of that and then graduating college, and this was like a super quick kind of deal, which I thought was kind of weird, but you know, it could have worked. Now, the problem with that is they changed so much, and yet they kept Light and Elle. I think they honestly should have just changed those 2 characters. They could have kept the Shinigami the same. It could have still been Ryuk. That is fine, you know, he can be moved. That's fine. He can be done in multiple ways. But with Light and Elle, because they kept these characters, but then they changed a lot about them, like the fact that Elle in the movie, this Netflix movie, Watari was murdered. And of course, that would upset Elle. Even in like the manga, you know, it would have been upsetting to him. But the thing is, even though Elle is passionate, he does care about someone like that. He wouldn't do all these stupid, irrational things that they made him do in the Netflix movie. Like, he was getting called out by the cops. He almost got arrested. He was acting so irrationally and stupid. And I'm like, that's not how Elle would act. As a character, that's not who he is. That's not how he would act. So it was like, okay, if you're gonna make this, make it a different detective, not already established characters. You can't take established characters and then just like change core things about them, like how they would react to a situation, how they handle things. You can't do that. It's already an established character. There's already an expected way of how he would do things, and tons of people already love that show and know him as a character and know he wouldn't do stupid crap like going so far as to like basically get arrested by the FBI and get put on their watch list and whatnot. He wouldn't do that. It was so dumb. And I'm like, Netflix, why would you change so much and keep the 2 original characters? I think it would have been really interesting if they would have made like it was a completely different kid who found it, and then a completely different kind of detective person had to deal with it. I think that would have been really interesting to see, because it would have been like, oh, here's like how maybe Death Note could play out in America in, you know, the later 2000s, not the early 2000s, you know, 2016 and whatnot, 2017. That could have been really cool and interesting. I would actually like it if someone made something kind of like that. That'd be cool. But the problem is they kept Light and L and kind of changed their dynamics. I mean, I guess they kept Light the same. I do rather like how they did Light. And don't get me wrong, the actor who played L, he was a great actor. And it's not his fault L was done wrong. He was just doing what the directors told him to do. It wasn't like the actor screwing things up. It was the directors directing him wrong and writing this character, the writers writing this character in a way that doesn't make sense and doesn't work. That, you know, that has nothing to do with the actor. I'm not at all bashing on the actor. Please don't think it that way. But it's like, if you're gonna change all these other things, just change who they are. I mean, like, Light, they changed so much. Like, he didn't even have a sister and a mom in this movie. They weren't there. There was no, you know, no whole detective team, really, that the dad was working with. And, like, Rem wasn't even in it, because Misa, whatever her name is in... I know they changed her name, but I can't remember what they changed it to, so I'm just going to call her Misa. She didn't have Rem. She didn't have her own Death Note. There was none of that. So it's like, well, okay, if you're going to change all this, just change the main characters, too. Just because it has the title Death Note, it can follow different people. It doesn't have to follow Light and L, especially when you're making everything else your own interpretation anyway. Just change the two characters. That's not that big a deal. Especially considering it takes place in a later time, it would make more sense to have them be different people. And it could be interesting. It's like, okay, here's how one person found the Death Note, and here's how they handled it. Here's how a different person finds the Death Note, what they do with it, how they handle that power, how that all plays out. That could be interesting to see. Because we get kind of multiple perspectives, but in a lot of ways, they're all kind of the same insane kind of people, or like they end up going kind of insane the way Light did. So it'd be interesting to see someone, you know, maybe they have the same moral compass, but they view things different. They come from a different background. They've had different experiences because they do live in another country and whatnot. That could be really interesting to see how someone else handles it. But no. So, Netflix. You do awesome, like, originals, like your shows and your movies. You've been kicking up the game recently with all that, like, you know, with Stranger Things, which is awesome, and Good Morning Call, the way you did that was awesome. Just a lot of, what is it, Little Evil, that movie that came out not too long ago, I watched it. That was actually pretty entertaining. You're doing so awesome with all these Netflix originals. So, when you do an adaptation, take note of this. If you're going to adapt something, either keep it as close to the original as possible, because obviously there are changes. Like, even in the original Japanese movies, there were changes made to make it work for a movie instead of in an episodic book format. Makes sense. Either, like I said, keep it as close to the original as possible, or if you're going to change it, change everything. You can keep the fact, okay, here's the Death Note, and here's the stuff, like how it works so that it is still Death Note, but change everything. Change the characters, you know, change the setting, change time, change it all. Don't change most and leave some things, because that doesn't work. When you're changing most aspects but try to keep one aspect, it doesn't work anymore, because those things don't go together. When the characters are already established and you try to change things about them, it doesn't work anymore, because they were already established, and here you are trying to change these characters but also keep them the same. It fights against itself. So honestly, like I said with this movie, it was not horrible. I kind of enjoyed it. I don't personally think I'd watch it again, really. I mean, it's not like a movie like most Disney movies, like I'll sit there and watch them repeatedly. But I don't regret watching it, and I don't think it's as horrible as everyone says it is. I think it can be worth checking out just to see it. And yeah, again, Netflix, if you're going to do an adaptation like that, please just keep that in mind when you do that, okay? You can do these adaptations. I know you can do them well. Like I said, you're... Oliver, back up! Hey! Stop ruining the blinds! You can do your original works good, Netflix. So, just keep up with it. Just, you know, I know you can do it. I believe in you. So anyway, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about the Death Note movie. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you kind of like me, just kind of like, there was good, there was bad, meh. Just let me know. And I will see you all next time. Bye! Yeah.